Welcome, my name is Eric Ventura. This presentation is called Supporting Trauma-Impacted Students with Chronic Dysregulation. It is a school-based approach to supporting students with chronic dysregulation. The purpose of this training is to learn how to support at-promise youth, reflecting on the needs observed in high-need school communities where many students may face trauma and require consistent structured supports in order to succeed. The goals of this presentation include to be able to understand trauma's impact on student behavior and learning, to identify internal and external signs of dysregulation, to examine environmental risk factors in the school setting, home setting, and in the community, to review current supports and evidence-based interventions, and to discuss practical strategies for school-based implementation. Who are the at-risk students? Our at-risk students are students who are exposed to trauma, chronic stress, or instability, students who demonstrate difficulty regulating emotions and behavior, and students whose needs are not consistently met across environments. These students are at an increased risk because trauma can disrupt emotional regulation, attention, and overall readiness to learn. Why are these students vulnerable? Exposure to trauma such as violence, instability, loss, and more. Events like these can disrupt the body's response to stress and hormonal responses, as well as overall affect the student's ability to be able to develop a sense of internal stability. Other reasons that they may be more vulnerable include inconsistent support systems, limited access to resources, ongoing stress across multiple environments, and we'll touch on these in a bit, as well as increased risk for some students who have identified disabilities. For example, students with autism or ADHD come with other risk factors as well. Some examples may include some students with autism may have increased challenges in forming meaningful bonds or relationships with their peers. Others may have barriers in communication in trying to gain access to the supports that they need. Some students with ADHD may be more vulnerable to trauma-related challenges due to the differences in emotional regulation, stress response, and coping processes, which can increase the likelihood of experiencing more intense or prolonged stress reactions. Risk is cumulative, and so when we see that there are stressors that exist across home, school, or the community setting, students are more likely to experience chronic dysregulation. These may show up in a couple different ways. Some of these characteristics may be internal, some of them may be external. Some of the externalizing behaviors include aggression, hyperactivity, elopement, defiance, and emotional outbursts. Some of the internalizing behaviors may present as anxiety, withdrawal, depression, or somatization. When reviewing the environmental factors, the goal is not to blame the student or the family, school, or the community. Instead, the goal is to understand how these stressors across different settings can accumulate onto one another and make it harder for the student to feel safe, regulated, and ready to learn. So, starting with the environmental factors in the home, they may include instability in the home, such as housing insecurity or homelessness, divorce or on and off presence of caregivers or parents, exposure to unexpected or unpredictable conflict, and exposure to traumatic events such as violence, drug abuse, and neglect, and inconsistent structure in the form of lack of clear expectations or unpredictable rules or discipline, uneven enforcement among siblings, and even inconsistent support during stressful periods. These home factors matter because students may come to school already carrying stress from unstable or unpredictable environments. When a student does not experience consistent safety or structure outside of school, they may need more support regulating emotions and responding appropriately during the school day. Environmental factors in the school setting may include chronic absenteeism, which may result in a student missing up to weeks or even at times up to entire months of their curriculum, which may also contribute to the feeling of instability in their daily life as well if they are not able to establish their daily routine in coming to school consistently. Other factors may include frequent behavior incidents that may result in disruption to the class or disruption to their ability to access the class if they get removed or suspended or whatever it may be. And overall, it may also affect their relationships with their peers and make it more challenging for them to form these relationships. Other factors may include academic gaps, which may increase frustration as the academic rigor also increases. And then as the gaps accumulate, they can get bigger and bigger and ultimately become a significant deficit, which only makes it that much more frustrating for the child. Getting held back, should it get to that point, can further affect not only their self confidence, but also the relationships with their peers who have moved on and they may have not. School factors are really important because they can either help to reduce the stress in their life or they can add to it. For example, chronic absenteeism and academic gaps can make the student feel behind, frustrated, or even disconnected. And like we said, frequent behavior incidents can affect the relationships with adults and their peers. Environmental factors in the community may include exposure to violence, which can make the student feel like violence is normal or even expected in their own life. And that affects their own sense of safety and their ability to establish a sense of safety, which is overall going to affect, again, their response to stressful situations. Other contributors may be poverty, which can result in challenges to establish stable communities, um, under resourced schools, food insecurity, transportation barriers, and work related burnout is more common. Now, when a student is thinking about or not having their needs met on the foundational level, such as physically, food insecurity, or are not able to get to school because there is no vehicle at the home, all these factors are going to take a priority over things like academics. And so academics is going to fall at the end and likely not be something at the forefront of their mind or something that they will be giving all of their effort. Other contributing factors may include limited access to services, such as healthcare deserts or long wait times at a healthcare facility, limited mental health services, or again, long wait lists for those healthcare services. At times, unfortunately, even may result in less capable providers or fewer of them, and at times, even a loss of access despite the eligibility for those services. May also result in barriers to educational supports such as tutoring, special education services, and extracurricular activities, and uh, it may also limit after school program availability as well. These factors help to shape how safe and supported students feel. When students are exposed to violence, poverty, or limited services, they have fewer opportunities to access support, build stability, and recover from stress outside of school. Looking at the home, the school, and the community factors together helps us to explain why dysregulation is often way more complex than just simply noncompliance. These students may be responding to layers of stress that have affected their ability to attend, engage, and learn. Some of the supporting data on trauma and student outcomes include the following. According to the CDC, approximately 1 in 4 children experience at least one traumatic event during childhood. According to the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, students exposed to trauma are more likely to demonstrate behavioral difficulties, including aggression and emotional dysregulation. According to Child Trends, trauma is associated with lower academic performance, including difficulties in attention, memory, and executive functioning. According to the Department of Education and Attendance Works, students experiencing trauma are at increased risk for chronic absenteeism, which may exceed up to even 30% in high need schools. Chronic absenteeism is strongly linked to reduced academic achievement and increased risk of school disengagement. These findings emphasize the need for school based interventions that address both academic and emotional functioning rather than just treating them as separate concerns. Trauma is not only a mental health concern, but also an academic and behavioral issue. Chronic stress affects attention, memory, and learning capacity, making it harder for students to attend, engage, and succeed. Some current supports that we have available include multi tiered systems of support, or MTSS, positive behavior interventions and supports, PBIS, and counseling services and social emotional learning programs, or SEL, check in, check out systems, and school based mental health support systems, or teams. These supports are most effective when implemented consistently across classrooms and staff. Simply having these supports available is not always enough. The consistency is required for the student to be able to truly benefit from these supports. Evidence-based interventions and trauma-informed practices. Research supports that trauma-informed practices are effective in improving student behavior, engagement, and emotional regulation. These can include, and this is directly referencing the needs and the risks that we had earlier mentioned. These supports can include establishing predictable routines and structured environments for the student, giving them some sense of stability. Creating safe and supportive learning spaces, fostering strong relationships between adults and students, teaching emotional regulation strategies such as social emotional learning and counseling and social stories, and providing opportunities for the student's voice to be heard and for them to be able to advocate for themselves. Trauma informed practices address not only the behavior themselves, but the underlying causes of the dysregulation, which is in line with what we've been discussing as far as proactive approaches and what we learned from the prepare model, which brings me to my next point, which is the role that we serve as school psychologists. Our role can wear many hats at times. Sometimes they include in regards to assessment and interventions, conducting functional behavioral assessments to identify the functions of behaviors, and then use that information to develop behavior intervention plans in alignment with the student's individual needs. Then, of course, we have to monitor their progress and make adjustments as needed and as driven by the data. Some of our responsibilities also include consultation and collaboration with teachers and staff, and providing support for the implementation of classroom based strategies, such as that can look like going into the classroom and helping to administer a social emotional learning lesson for the class, or providing some supports or some strategies for the teacher to be able to use when managing behaviors. It may also look like collaboration with a multidisciplinary team during an assessment, an IEP, or an SST. It may also look like, in the case of a crisis response and prevention, taking the lead or serving in a position of a lead role or a support role when crises occur. This may often take place in response to behavioral escalations, as well as when integrating proactive practices in alignment with the prepare model. It may also look like conducting risk assessments, suicide assessments, or threat assessments, and supporting post crisis recovery and stabilization. It may also look like systemic level supports, as in supporting implementation of MTSS, PBIS framework, and promoting consistency across the classrooms and settings, helping to develop school wide prevention and intervention systems. Again, not just knowing that these systems like MTSS and PBIS are in place, but that they are being implemented consistently across staff, um, and across settings in order to make sure that they are not only effective, but say, for example, that we are reinforcing the desired behaviors and not accidentally reinforcing maladaptive behaviors. Some practical applications in the school setting. This may look like collaboration and coordination with the teachers, administrators, counselors, and the community agencies as well. We can ensure that there is consistency in coordinated support across the environments, making sure that everyone understands what it is that we're supporting and how best to do so. It may also look like strengthening tier one supports, making sure that there are clear expectations on the entire campus as well as routine across classrooms. We also want to reinforce consistent behavior management practices school wide, again, making sure that PBIS is being implemented with fidelity. Some other applications may look like data driven decision making, making sure that we are not only tracking data, but using that data both in behavioral sense as well as academic data to be able to guide the decisions that we make for interventions and changes to the students' plans, as well as using it to monitor their progress and make the adjustments as needed. Um, it may also look like staff training and support. This means that we provide trauma informed practice training to our staff so that they may be able to use these skills when de escalating situations, and supporting our staff, of course, in recognizing the early signs of dysregulation so that we may be able to prevent uh, crisis events. Which brings us to the last one, which is crisis readiness and response, which for us as individuals involves making sure that we ourselves feel confident in our ability to um, respond to those crisis events, making sure that we know what to do and feel confident in knowing what to do, as well as ensuring that our other staff also understand their roles so that they too may feel confident in their response to crisis situations. All of these are important, especially to developing a form of consistency, because again, even the strongest of interventions can lose their effectiveness when the staff respond differently across settings. So, shared expectations and follow through in this case are essential. Some key points I would like you to take with you are that trauma significantly impacts student behavior, learning, and engagement. Dysregulation often reflects unmet needs rather than intentional defiance. And this is something we want to teach all of our staff and our teachers in order to be able to uh, truly sympathize and try to understand our students, especially in their times of need, rather than form any kind of biases towards unwanted behaviors, in understanding that they are more than likely either trying to communicate something or responding to stressors or factors that we may not be able to see right off the top. Another key point in alignment with what we have been discussing as far as proactive approaches is that prevention and early intervention are critical to reducing crisis situations. In addition to that, schools must focus on both academic and social emotional supports. Our students are not one sided. There are many contributing sides to the students, and so we have to try to look at them or look to them from as many perspectives as we can. Another point is that consistent systems and staff alignment are essential. Again, we require that consistency. And lastly, that trauma informed approaches improve both behavior and learning outcomes. Schools play a critical role in providing stability, safety, and support for our students. When staff use consistent trauma informed systems, students are more likely to feel safe, remain engaged, and access the learning. So, by strengthening these systems and supporting the other staff, schools can create environments where students feel safe, supported, and ready to learn. Thank you for your time. My hope is that this training reinforces the importance of viewing dysregulation through a trauma informed lens and responding with consistency, prevention, and support.